Artillery 2.0 is coming to World of Tanks console, and today's video is going to discuss the options that Wargaming have for artillery pieces within the game, and of course I want to hear your opinions in the comment section down below. Let's get into it. Starting first with what makes artillery broken within World of Tanks, and that is because essentially they have the ability to remove 100% of your hit points from your tank when you may have been doing absolutely nothing wrong. And in most cases, even if you aren't doing anything wrong and maybe you have made a little bit of a misplay, they still take a lot of your hit points anyway because they can miss you and still deal 800 damage. Maybe they can deal 700 damage if they miss you. That is by literally not even directly hitting your tank, they can still splash you. And in some cases, because of the way that artillery actually works, sometimes it's better for them to aim for a splash damage than it is to even penetrate your tank and take all of your hit points away, because they can deal maybe 4,000 damage in one singular shell in something like a T92 by splashing 4 different tanks all bunched up on a corner than it would be to pen an Amaraka Maus for all of its hit points. That's how ridiculous artillery is in some scenarios, and that scenarios are what make them super annoying within the game. It's not the fact that maybe they are inherently the most overpowered class and that they can win you the game just purely on the artillery pieces that you have on your team. It's about the fact that they can ruin people's games for absolutely no apparent reason that the enemy team has maybe made. They may not have made any misplays. They literally could have been going about their day completely fine, and because RNG for the artillery player has gone well, they've been hit for all of their hit points, or alternatively just their game completely ruined by the fact that the artillery didn't even pen and it took out like 4 of the 5 crew members that they have and caused them to use their repair kit preemptively when they didn't really want it. And this is the core reason why I think a lot of players get so frustrated with artillery, is because there is no counter to the artillery other than having your own artillery in the game, which never actually counter battery anyway. So it really is the case at which like most players hate artillery, and that is kind of where the positioning of Wargaming and the decision to actually change the game and artillery themselves comes into play, and we'll talk about that now. Wargaming have a variety of options that they could go with in terms of changing the artillery, and of course we don't know for sure what option they're going to take. I just hope that that is the correct one, because there are plenty of wrong decisions that they could make within the game to completely make them even worse, and in some cases probably make them overpowered comparatively to what they are now, even though they can take out like 100% of your hit points. I think what Wargaming are most likely going to do as option number 1 is probably just reduce the alpha damage, reduce the amount of splash potentially that the tanks have, so that they don't hit you for so much health. And when they do hit you, it's not so much of a middle finger from the artillery player and Wargaming themselves for allowing it to happen, and maybe that'll become a little bit easier for the players. However, you know, you can't just completely nerf the alpha damage without buffing them in some way to kind of counteract it, and that's really where the problem in lies. Would you rather be hit for 1,000 damage every 50 seconds, or would you rather be hit for like 500 damage every like 20 seconds if they make artillery faster firing? That's of course what I want to hear in the comment section down below. Do you think that they shouldn't even mess with them? Because in my personal opinion, given Wargaming's track record, we have no idea what they're going to do and whether it's even going to benefit us playing the game and artillery players themselves. And of course what I think is going to happen is, because of that reload debuff or decrease, you're going to be probably getting hit more often, which could be somewhat like the PC version of the game actually has, whereby, you know, they've brought in this stun mechanic, which is very, very toxic on PC, and a lot of players absolutely despise it and think that it's actually worse than when they got hit for 1,000 damage instead, because it effectively nullifies your tank from the game for about 30 seconds after they hit you. And in that 30-second period, because they have the ability to reload, they then hit you again and you're stunned for the continuation, and sometimes you can even be perma-stunned, and that is certainly something I do not want to see on World of Tanks console. I don't think the stun mechanic is the way to go about it. I think if you want to actually purposely change the way that artillery work, in my opinion, as option number 2, is just to nerf the alpha damage but provide some sort of assistance way that the artillery players can actually help out your team by way of something like smoke, which Wargaming have obviously introduced in the Cold War game mode. I don't think it would be too much of a change that Wargaming actually introduce non-lethal rounds to artillery players whereby they can actually fire smoke rounds. Now, is this going to be something really fun where loads of tanks are basically going to be releasing smoke all across the map? Probably not. And I think that the way in which they actually implement it, if this is a way that they're going to go about it, would be in the form of like some sort of limit on the amount of smoke rounds, or potentially the different rounds that artillery have within the game, so that they aren't just spamming smoke, because that could get probably more toxic than just being hit for 1,000 damage. Now, one thing that I do want to note about this, however, is that with the smoke rounds, maybe they could introduce other different rounds, and I think that this is where Wargaming could really get exploratory in terms of like maybe they could explore different options and try out different new ammunition types that artillery players can use, which still makes artillery playable and not terrible. It just means that the other 90% of players who don't play artillery don't have to suffer losing all of their hit points to a tank class that really they can't do anything about until the end of the game, at which point most of the time maybe they got taken out anyway and they couldn't actually deal with the artillery themselves. And yeah, the fact that Wargaming basically say, well, your artillery players on your team could take out the enemy artillery players, it's not really ever the case, and you can't actually decide yourself what your teammate is going to do unless you're in the platoon, and at which case, you know, that's a very small minority of players that play in a platoon, especially with one with an artillery player and one that's actually willing to counterbat with the enemy team. So yeah, I don't think that's ever an option that I think is kind of an excuse from Wargaming. So yeah, I really hope that they get this right. Of course, let me know your comments in the comment section down below as to what you think of artillery and how they can actually balance them. Do you think or disagree with the things that I'm saying? Because, you know, I'm just one player. I'm not expecting anyone to accept that what I say is, you know, granted like everything that should be implemented in the game. I am just simply starting a discussion that I think is very valuable for the community, and I want to reiterate that yes, artillery is changing. Artillery 2.0 is coming. Wargaming have not disclosed what their aims or intentions are with the artillery changes, which I think is very dangerous for them, and I think it's very dangerous for the community as a whole, because if Wargaming aren't disclosing what they're planning to do, then we really have no idea what they could actually come up with, and in fact, it could be much worse than the current system we have, and since we don't have any input into the actual development of it, then I think this could be super dangerous. We all know what happened with update 6.0, and we do not want that to happen ever again, and I really hope they kind of come to us, ask our opinions, and don't get this wrong, because this could significantly impact the health of the game, especially the World War II mode, albeit Cold War doesn't currently have artillery in it, so for those of you playing Cold War, you're probably laughing, but World War II players, this could be a great thing or a terrible thing. It really relies with Wargaming, and given their track record, I don't really think that it's going to be 100% completed to the best of their ability without hindering some aspects of the game, and so I'm really scared that they are going to mess this up. Hopefully they don't, but first let's wait and see as to what they've come up with. Hopefully they give us the information as soon as possible, so maybe they can alter it or change it as to our comments and our constructive feedback, and then maybe they won't ruin the game with these new artillery mechanics or whatever they're planning to do, and I certainly don't want to be seeing the stun mechanic come into console. Thank you very much for watching. Of course, check out some of the other videos and the update news for last week and this upcoming week on screen right now, and of course check out some of the gameplay that will be coming as well. Goodbye.